Welcome, everybody. Welcome back. I'm Martina Guilfoyle. I'm the president and CEO of Chattanooga Neighborhood Enterprise, and we have been spearheading this process that started back in October, November. And this plan is the result of a group of committed St. Elmo property owners that saw a vision, not just for their properties. It started with their properties, but then it really became, how do we really help integrate the properties that we own into a community? And that process then became bigger than St. Elmo to how do we connect St. Elmo to the Riverwalk and Virginia Avenue and Alton Park and the bike trails. And so it really has grown into something I think that was much larger, which I think is a testament to the ability of community coming together to say, how can we really plan and make our community a thriving place where we all want to live? So this has been a long process, probably hundreds of hours of many of you attending a variety of charrettes and giving up your Saturdays and coming and talking with Mike and his team. And what we have tonight for you is a draft. It's not final. It's really to get some more feedback, question and answers on anything that's being presented. Then it'll be tweaked a little bit more, and then we'll put it online for all of you to be able to go online and look at it some more yourself. Before we get into tonight's program, though, let me just recognize Councilman Larry Groen, who's here. There he is. Hi, Larry. That was a good entrance. And then we have Commissioner Joe Graham. Hi, Joe. Thanks for coming. I just also want to recognize this process would not have happened without the unwavering support of both the Lyndhurst Foundation and the Benwood Foundation. They have been tried and true in terms of putting their money here. And I have to say, for those of you that don't know, I've only been in Chattanooga at CNE since September. And I'm just thrilled. I have not seen a community that's so engaged with foundations and the city and the county that have come together to say, how do we really work together to make our community a better place? So I'm really thrilled to be here tonight. Just to give you an overview, Mike's going to come up and spend about 45 minutes to go through the plan. And then we're going to bring up Macon Toledano from the Lyndhurst Foundation, who's going to talk a little bit about what's already being done. And then we'll open it up for question and answers. And we promise to get you out of here by 7 p.m. So if you can hang in, the best is yet to come. So with that, Mike Watkins.
Hi, it's great to be back in Chattanooga and in St. Elmo. I want to echo some of Martina's comments to begin, and I don't say this everywhere I work. I travel a lot because of the work that I do, but it's been very exciting working here with you all in St. Elmo. The whole team felt that way when we left last time. Somebody just checked with me to make sure we got out okay, because we left the day of the big snowstorm. We almost didn't. But you all have been absolutely great to work with. We'll do public planning charrettes like this other places, and we'll have a third of the crowd in a much bigger community. But you all have something, I think, that is unique and special, and it's easy to see why you're passionate about it. So I hope that we're able to contribute something to the ideas about how things might unfold through this master plan that we've prepared for St. Elmo. If things do get a little slow in here tonight, you should see what the art teacher's doing down the hall, down by the drinking vase, doing a beautiful mural down there. So feel free to slip out and check that out if this isn't all it's cracked up to be. But I think it will be. Whoop. Okay. So we held a public design charrette. Invited many of you participated, I know, because I recognize you all, and we had a meeting where you shared a lot of your ideas about what you liked and in some cases didn't like about St. Elmo, to get us started in terms of thinking about what its future might be like, how we might manifest those ideas in this master plan. Later in the week, the weekend actually, on Saturday afternoon, we met and started sharing plans with you guys. I picked these two to illustrate the point because these are two that you'll never see again. Because in this case, you shared with us what you didn't like about those ideas. We've revised them several times since. So I'm going to share with you the new plans tonight, which are no doubt going to be revised again as the ideas about how this place grows unfolds. And what I'm sharing with you tonight is really just skimming the surface of a book that we're putting together that CNE is going to make available to you all online before the end of next week. Okay, we've got a few I's to dot, T's to cross. You'll see the whole thing later. Relax, because tonight you're just going to see the surface of this. Okay, we're going to go quickly through a number of the drawings that'll be in the complete book. Now, these drawings are full of lots of ideas that you all will join with entities like the city or the CNE and others to implement. Okay, so we've prepared a quick list and suggested what priorities might be and who might be involved and so forth. Even that list needs refinement from you all to say, wait, listen, I'd like to be involved in that one. I'm really passionate about that particular thing. So you'll have the opportunity to chime in and support which ideas are advanced and which aren't. We talked about this plan when we were together in January. This is John Nolan's plan from 1911. It was done at the request of the city's Parks Commission here in Chattanooga. And if I can juggle three things at once, I'll point out here this great idea he had for a greenway. Here's St. Elmo. You must know that. And then one of John Nolan's ideas was to create a greenway that wrapped these neighborhoods along a natural creek there, emptying into the river. That didn't happen. Okay. It's quite likely, much as it disappoints me to say so, it's quite likely that not every idea in the plan that I share tonight is going to happen. Okay? Of course, you know I'd like to see them all happen, but it's up to you. A colleague of mine is well known in our little pack of consultants for saying, we propose, you dispose. Okay? So just know that that's expected, that that's your role. Okay, so the plans that I'm presenting tonight are going to start at the biggest scale and then step gradually into the center of St. Elmo. Okay, there's a drawing in the book in the front that will show you the scale of the drawings that are to come and how they zoom in. There were occasionally a stray idea or two, like for an intersection down here, that is not within the study area, but we included it anyway, just so you don't forget that that's, we thought was a good idea. So we've included some of those things, but we're going to step in terms of scale, and then with each scale, we've listed the drawings. This is for those of you that intend to go through this material very thoroughly, okay? So if you're not getting this tonight, it doesn't matter. But here at each scale, say the village center scale, these are the drawings you'll find in the book, or at this, and we are calling this area with the school and the rec center, the post office, the fire station, library, the civic center, just to distinguish the two. So we have the village center and the civic center. So then there's the list of drawings and the multiple options and so forth. Okay, so at that biggest scale, here's your historic district. Way up here is the study area, stretching really from Old Wauhatchie up here to Alton Park on this side, 40th Street and the cemetery here, and then really centered around the town center area. The other two areas that we've identified on here are the areas that were where the residential study was done, and then in this case, the retail study. So there were other consultants hired to give us information about how much demand is there for residential or how much demand is there for retail in this area. So those are the particular areas that those consultants studied. How are we doing here? Is this too loud, not loud enough? To me, it sounds very loud. It's good? We're good. Okay, great, good. Okay, now another interesting thing that came up repeatedly every meeting was this idea of connections. Okay, connections. St. Elmo to Alton Park, St. Elmo to the downtown or to the Riverwalk and so forth. Well, it's no wonder, because when you map all of those connections, you know, St. Elmo has the incline, the Riverwalk, the Guild Trail, this ridge trail that it seems even some of you had forgotten about, the Virginia Avenue Bike Trail. There's even thoughts about this rails to trails intersecting eventually with Central Avenue and connecting as a loop around, as well as the CARTA, the bus routes and so forth. So there are many connections that all seem to cross in one way or another, passing through or landing you in St. Elmo, which explains why it serves as a center for these neighborhoods. Okay, so we're going to move out from the study area now and look at an idea for a particular intersection. This is 46th and 47th Streets intersecting St. Elmo. And some of the residents from the southern end of St. Elmo came in and would say, well, you're right to focus so much attention on the center, you know, but St. Elmo's very long and linear, and it's a hike for us to get into the center for, you know, a cup of coffee or, you know, a bite. And at one time we learned that there was a very interesting third place that served the southern end of St. Elmo called Okie Dokies. Does anybody remember that? I think it's an absolutely fantastic, few of you, yeah. Fantastic name, and if you could find another Mrs. Okie and have her open up again, I think it would be absolutely terrific. I'm sorry? Okay, well, it doesn't have to be Mrs. Okie in particular, but somebody to run the third place. You know, there are people that play golf because they love golf, you know, or frankly run trails because other people love to run the third place, whether it's a place like Pasha's, the coffee shop, you know, or a corner market. And it's how they engage the community. They know you by name. When you come in, they pass on information about how other neighbors are doing and so forth. It's as important a piece of community infrastructure, you know, as your street network or your park system, I think, is that social network. So the idea is to restore some sort of third place at that intersection. Perhaps there's an opportunity to make a plaza for more gathering or a piece of civic art in front of the church here. And then because we had read the residential report and it tells about the housing demand for this area, we thought, well, maybe there's an opportunity in the southern part of St. Elmo to introduce some new housing types. It's not uncommon in a neighborhood that's full of big old homes to have a problem arise when the folks who've lived there for years, raising their families there and so forth, find themselves no longer able to care for the home or no longer interested in all of that maintenance, preferring instead a smaller place to live. And they look around the neighborhood and find it's full of big homes that require lots of maintenance and care and so forth. And what they'd really like is a smaller place, but in the neighborhood, you know, because it's their community. So one thought is that there could be an opportunity here to introduce some new housing types, perhaps townhouses. The small apartment building, you know, with 4 units or 6 units is another great model. Could be elevator served even. So that's what we're suggesting here, to put just a little bit of more density in the area of this town center. And if you're wondering what happens to the existing houses that are there, because they're quite nice, we suggested that they could be moved to the back of that lot and face Virginia Avenue. Now, this is probably a good time to mention, to acknowledge that that I don't own this land, you know. So we understand that it's owned by an individual, you know, or several or what have you. These are just ideas, you know. This isn't going to happen, you know, without their participation, you know. But it could be that somebody a few doors away likes the idea, or a block over, and says, well, I'd make provision for some smaller units like that on my lot, you know. So it's just an idea that we're putting out there because one of you all came in and said, how about something of a little center down at the south end? Okay, so if those units were moved back to Virginia Avenue, it's looking a little underutilized, right? There's just, you know, but it's quite nice, you know, as it is, but underutilized. if this is a place that anticipates growth, one could easily imagine that some of that might occur here. Now, a few other things you notice. There's kind of a charming ditch running through here, built by hand. It's an interesting piece of infrastructure that simply lies in, the backyards of a number of folks. That this trail connects through the length of St. Elmo makes it ideal as a pedestrian and bike trail, because there are, fewer curb cuts and that kind of thing. One of the other things we did when we were here in January is to read the prior reports that other planners had done to prepare ourselves. Your regional planning authority did a plan in 2001 in which they proposed auxiliary units, that people who own homes here, property here, be allowed to have a rental unit on their lot, which is really the ideal form of rental housing when you have the tenant living right next to the landlord, because everything is monitored, where the trash is kept and the noise level and all of those things. So it's a great tenant-landlord relationship. And one of the things we thought was, well, perhaps in these backyards, you might imagine small cottages, a way to provide some rental incomes, housing for a different segment of the market and so forth. Another thing we learned is that the folks at Rock City on top of the hill are attracting something on the order of 275,000 visitors a year. It's some huge number like that. And there's not a single hotel room, maybe one bed and breakfast in town. Where do those people stay? I guess downtown. But tourists have this way of leaving lots of money behind. We've all been tourists other places. Wouldn't you like some of that to stay in St. Elmo? So one possibility is that if you were to add small cottages along that trail in the back, is that it could become your bed and breakfast. So some of those auxiliary buildings, they may be rented to people who live there and are part of the community, but they could also be rented out as little bed and breakfast outbuildings as well. So you see a mix of those here, sometimes 2 stories, sometimes 1 story. Here's the bike, reinforcing the idea of the bike connection, and then occasionally some bridges to get across to the cottages on the other side. But those were some thoughts about what might happen on Virginia. Now there are other pieces, other ideas. There's an idea for a boat launch, different things. They're built into the report, okay? I'm not going to talk about all those tonight. Now I'm going to move to the study area that we looked at. And there are a few ideas in this study area that, as we zoom in, you won't see in any greater detail than this. They are the idea of having a visitors center where the old Far Enough home site is. Do you know that place? Kind of up on top of the hill, has an incredible view of the river, of the downtown. And somebody said, well, one idea we've had is that we collect a number of the I'll call them outdoor nonprofits, the one doing the paddle stuff on the river or the trails and the hiker crowd, the biker crowd, so forth. And we could have one place where visitors to Chattanooga could come, and we could actually give them an overview of what's possible. Oh, shoot. You know what I didn't do? I didn't start the timer, and I promised I would be done in 45 minutes. And now, okay, I'll just have to keep an eye on the clock. So one idea is that that Far Enough home site be used as a visitor center. The other is that there might be some housing along that edge. Right now, Old Wauhatchie is kind of a lopsided street because there's housing on one side, not on the other. There's remnants of the old stone wall on one side. And the idea is that you might add some housing, on both sides to even that out. Another idea that won't show up as we zoom in is this idea of a community garden as part of the Carta lot where the incline is. That idea wasn't ours. You all have proposed that already. In fact, not only proposed it, but I understand that the proposal was accepted and it simply hasn't been implemented. So if that's something that you're passionate about, having a community garden, it might be time to simply dust off that old proposal and take it back to Carta, confirm their support, and see about implementing that one. Now, as we zoom in, I'm going to first start with this area we're calling the Civic Center. You guys can call it something different. Let us know. We can change it, that sort of thing. But for now, just so you know where we are, the rec center where we are is here. Here's the school. the post office, the fire station. And we're going to talk a lot about this area and some about the connections in that direction. The constraints in that area explain why it's developed in the pattern that it has. Because what's been done is to develop on all the easy sites. So if you look at this map, this shows you the wetlands. They're in light blue here, that wrap this area, which is an area with bad soils. There's another area with bad soils here. They've been remediated to some degree, so they're suitable for things like parking and ball fields, but not structurally sufficient to build buildings. There's a 500-year floodplain that runs through here. There's the interesting configuration of the property line, that runs through between the park and the school. So there's this sort of layering of, and the topography, another challenge out there. There's some beautiful mature trees, another challenge out there. So as we started looking at plans, there was also a study done on the residential demand for this area. We took that study and we mapped it at the same scale as this drawing. So if you take the recommendation, it's not even a recommendation, if you take the findings of the residential consultant, what they're saying is that in the next 3 to 6 years, there's demand that could be absorbed in St. Elmo for 275 new residential units. That's not houses, it's not apartments, it's actually a mix. That includes everything. So 275 is the total. They suggest that there's demand for 65 detached houses, 50 townhouses, 40 multifamily for sale, and 120 multifamily for rent. Now, that's not to say you're going to get that. All they're doing is saying that's the kind of demand we found. So if you take that demand and put it on the ground, it requires this much real estate. The colors may be a little hard to distinguish in the light, but again, in the report, you'll see clearly that this much of it is the single family detached and so forth. So just to give you visually an idea how much area that takes up. Then we started doing plans. I showed you the first 2 iterations. We got a call after the design charrette because people started reacting, saying, yes, but what about this idea and what about this idea? So prepared another plan in which the fields were placed on the poor soil. In this area, the wetlands were maintained. You can, as I said, you can place the fields on the bad soil. You just can't build anything there. What this does is it connects through. So 38th Street here actually runs all the way through to the Bilo parking lot. So we get not only a safe walk, but a route for cars, bicyclists, and so forth. So we make a stronger connection between the neighborhoods into the center. And then there are a couple of connections this way. This one's vehicular. And then a pedestrian connection so the kids at the rec center and so forth can get back to the fields easily. Okay, that notes on everything I said. Now, what happened after we did that is some folks said, but we like the fields next to the rec center. And there's some reason for that. If you're running the summer camp and you've got a group of kids that are going outdoors to play, there's not necessarily a hike that has to be involved if the fields are right next to the rec center. So then we did a scheme that said, okay, we'll save the floodplains, the wetlands, the topography, the trees, and the bad soils, and the fields. And what could we build if we did that? And what we found is that you could introduce some housing at this end of 38th Street, and some housing down at this end. Here's the school, again, just to orient you. Some housing down at this end. And that yields about 37 40-foot lots. I'm just going to give you a comparison. The prior scheme was 55 40-foot lots, okay? But this whole area remains very much like it is now. What you don't get is the connection. You don't get the connection through to the Bilo parking lot. You don't get a connection in this direction beside the school. Then we came back and said, all right, what if we kept the fields where they are, but we took out the bad soil, replaced it with good soil? Because that's certainly possible. It's expensive, but it's possible. So in this case, 38th hugs goes around the fields here, kind of hugs the existing buildings, and then would split in this case and go around to the bylaw here, or around the other side here, or down to 40th in this location. So you actually get pretty good connection in that case. The reason for this unusual shape is because of the form of the land out there now. So up where the tennis courts are, the idea is that this would be a promenade along the edge. So these homes are about 10 feet above the field. You know, they look out over the field. Then the connection moves back up to the bylaw parking lot here. This scheme yields 77 40-foot lots. So it's interesting that, you know, we're able to accommodate the fields and even provide for some additional housing and get the connection. So the more input we get, the better the plan gets, the more interesting the plan gets. So that's the reason for you all to stay very involved in offering your oh, but let me mention one thing here. This list over here, this annotated list is basically what I'm telling you now. Okay, all these things are noted on the side. So I'm feeling very proud of ourselves. You know, I'm reviewing a copy, the hard copy of this report on the plane on the way down last night. And I'm reading through the list of ideas here and so forth, and I noticed that this one, these are home lots with an alley behind, and then a street here. The street wraps around like this, so you get fronts of houses facing down the nice big green here. This one we thought we would have houses just facing a pedestrian path. You know, not every street has to have cars. Small group of houses facing a pedestrian path. Note number 7, over here's a dog park. Okay, we're not going to propose a dog park in front of those houses, all right? It's a mistake. So we have some I's to dot and T's to cross. So we are, we're going to make a list in the event that's not the only oversight in the document. We are going to address all of those. The folks at C&E are going to comb through the document. And we're thinking it'll take just a couple days, okay, to fix things like this. And by the end of next week, you should have access to this document online, okay? So the folks at C&E are going to make it widely available. We just need a couple more days to fix some things like that. Okay. Now, very often, not so much here in St. Elmo, because frankly, Chattanooga is a pretty advanced place when it comes to good urbanism. Like the people that you have here and the thinking that goes on here, it's very interesting to see, which explains why you have so many interesting things going on, I think, frankly. Other places, the constant question that would come up is, what about parking? What about parking? You know, so without being asked, just because we thought it would be expected, we did a parking study in the Civic Center area, and then you'll see also in the downtown, to see how many parking spaces are gained or lost if you implement these ideas. So if we get rid of the parking lots, or the biggest parking lots behind these buildings, and move them to the front and add parking on street and so forth, with this plan we pick up 84 additional parking spaces. Okay, and the homes all have park spaces on their lots. That's, you know, available for public use. Okay, when we're adding new lots like this and even new streets, sometimes in order to maintain the pattern of the existing urban fabric, a new code is necessary because inadvertently municipalities have adopted more suburban design standards, usually use-based standards. What we're proposing is that you all might consider a form-based code. We proposed that to some folks during the Charrette. They loved the idea. In fact, you know, they were ready with the idea, you know, before we proposed it, said we really need a form-based code. So we've drafted that as well. And as I said, it includes proposals for new streets. Your streets are absolutely charming here, sometimes a little narrow. Like, couldn't the sidewalk be a little wider in places, or you have one more tree, you know, a little bit more room? So these are those kinds of standards that provide that extra space. We also looked at very particular places like the intersection of 40th and Tennessee. Other people had done that before us, the Transportation Department and the folks at Think Bike. We picked one of those schemes, happened to be this one, but I think there's a way to elaborate that corner that would create a great opportunity to terminate the vista down 40th and the vista down Tennessee in this direction with a piece of public art. You know, you guys are about to install a great piece downtown already. So this is just lining you up, setting you up for your next project, perhaps. Great location for that. Okay, now 40th Street, some ideas about changing that. I'm going to show you the illustration in a moment, but the thing to keep your eye on would be the garage doors of the firehouse here. Okay, because, you know, just to give you some reference, because when we, if we were to implement the ideas that we've just proposed 40th Street could wind up looking like this, with a bike lane on one side. The green area turned into a linear gym next to the cemetery. Here you'll see in the plan we pulled the post office up to the corner. Now these are long-term ideas, okay? So, some short, some long-term. But if the post office were to go in a new building, they could pull up to the corner and then shape a civic plaza. Here's the firehouse with its doors. Perhaps we give them a porch, so the firefighters have a place to engage the community when they're not out doing their thing. And then the library, it's I'm sure with good reason at the time, but it sits back from the street with a parking lot in the front, which actually is what you see right now when you look down 40th. So you look down 40th toward Alton Park from St. Elmo, and there's nothing that's drawing you down there. We think a civic square in that location might do the trick. So when it's time to expand or renovate the library, think about pulling it up so it can be a participant in the civic space here in this location. Now for the ideas about the village center, it's a little less, it's not as challenged with natural constraints. The wetlands, floodplains, steep slopes, bad soil are all up in this corner. But it has some interesting man-made constraints. Let's say the pattern of streets, the size of the lots, the rather cranky nature. But it's actually what gives the place a lot of its charm. When we were looking at the downtown area, we looked to the retail study that was done. And this fellow says that in that same time period, Bob Gibbs says, that St. Elmo could actually support another 55,000 square feet of commercial space. And he breaks it down very specifically. You'll see in the report, jewelry stores, hardware stores, general merchandise. The biggest category is full service restaurants, okay? On the ground, it's this big. If you put it in the form of a big box, compare that to the buy low, Or what we prefer are the smaller, what we call live work units, commercial on the ground floor, residential above. Interestingly, when you look at the number of stores and the size of their footprints, most of what he's recommending is the small stuff. And it was really, I think, a good thing. It just fits beautifully in with the fabric that you have now. So we were keeping an eye on this study as we were making proposals for how the plan might evolve downtown. Okay, so I'm going to show you a series of images moving along St. Elmo and starting at the south end, moving to the north. But in plan first, you'll see a pretty consistent pattern where we're pulling buildings up to here's the Carta lot. This is the name, the Purple Daisy. I have that right? Okay, great, thanks. The Purple Daisy in this location, right by the intersection to Ox Highway. This is the parking lot in front of the deli and the line of buildings that stays here. This is a largely open site behind the burrito place. This is right now a parking lot between two of your larger buildings, 1885, and I only know this one as Richard's building. Sorry, there's probably some other name for it, but you know where I mean. The bank that is, has the ATM falling into the sinkhole. And then this is that group of buildings where the buildings run perpendicular to the street, and so does the parking. So if you walk along the street, it's building, parking, What we might prefer is a continuous edge of buildings, as you have here and here, with the parking behind. It's tricky there because they're different owners, So it requires cooperation and so forth. Over time, it's possible, So you'll see a series of ideas like that now presented. Okay, that's the list. Oh, but let's see. This is the parking comparison here. So if you take all the ideas that we're proposing and you check the impact on the parking, we're adding 47 new spaces downtown. These are not spaces on private property, but spaces that would be available either on the street or in a publicly accessible lot. And when we say just put parking on the street, we have actually measured the street to make sure it fits. So in this particular case, we are on St. Elmo beside Chatham. And we've proposed, here's the existing condition, then we've proposed 3 different options for how that street might be reconsidered, if you will. Some of them involve some of Chatham's property, so stay on good terms. But there are opportunities there to make improvements that I think would benefit the whole community. But they're very specific. Same thing along St. Elmo in Tennessee. We've measured the streets, and you'll find in the report the measure drawings that, and some of these streets change in width. So it's not enough to say, do this along Tennessee. It matters where you are along Tennessee. Okay, but the report will tell you where specifically where the proposal was made. Now, another very specific idea has to do with where Virginia Avenue and Ox Highway cross this little bit of St. Elmo. It splits with Tennessee right up here. So you all know where this is. We've tried crossing that intersection as pedestrians. We know how challenging, that can be firsthand, particularly when you have a measuring wheel and a camera and things like that. So we get that. Other people had done some work rethinking that, how we could give better access to bikes and people crossing that intersection. This scheme by your transportation department is actually quite good. We made one suggestion that instead of running the sidewalk along the curb here, that you might take advantage of the wider right-of-way and put the sidewalk against the right-of-way, which frees up a planter opportunity here. And then this box here is actually another monument opportunity that I'm going to show you in a minute, but it would be very visible coming down St. Elmo in this direction. So then bicyclists will have the opportunity to cross here onto Virginia or here and continue down St. Elmo. So slightly more detailed, very specific ideas there. Now, I'm going to show you the before and after possibility with this intersection. Some of these don't look very much like the same place, okay? But to prove it to you, here's the fire hydrant, the street sign, the traffic lights, the new restaurant kind of on top of the hill. I think this building you'll see as well in a minute. If you were to take the ideas presented in the master plan, here's the Purple Daisy, its parking lot in front, and do something like switch those, pull the building up to the street, put the parking in the back. That intersection could look like this. So here's the fire hydrant, the street sign, the traffic signals, the building I pointed out in the back. But look how cool it is if you could get that building pulled up to the street. The parking goes behind. The incentive to do that is you get a bigger building, more space to lease out. Look at the visibility. When you come in, the first non-residential building you'd see when you enter St. Elmo, frankly, Chattanooga, from the south along St. Elmo would be the Purple Daisy. And so, sometimes it gets a little late at night when we're working on these things. And don't you know, we even, found a public art opportunity on top of the Purple Daisy. I even like this idea better. The monument in the middle gets a couple of little gnomes. Do you see them here? Pointing you up the hill, because this is that all-important turn about how to get folks up to Rock City. So that's another idea. The sidewalk cafe that spills out here. Here's the bike lane connecting over to Virginia Avenue or further down St. Elmo. The park where the ditch disappears, that reappears down by the ATM. This is where that ditch along Virginia Avenue disappears, and that could actually be an opportunity for a landscape installation that explains to kids how landscaping can filter water before it gets down to the river and so forth. And then it appears again, there's actually a well even downtown. It took us a while to find that, but there's a well right downtown in your place. So you could tell the story of how that water gets from Virginia Avenue all the way down to the river in a way that's informative to kids, and these days that's important. Kids are very interested in the environment. This is a building. I'm not going to talk a lot about this one tonight because here you're seeing the back of it, but there's an opportunity for a civic building at a key spot in the plan. So watch for that when you review the plans. The next spot I want to talk about is that at the base of the incline. So this is the entrance to the parking lot where the deli is. You see the incline pavilion here, 1885. Sorry, Richard's building again here. plenty of pavement to go around, mostly dedicated to the car. It could look like this. We had a lot of conversation about um, selling tickets in a place in the plaza where people who bought a ticket and then around and realized they had an hour to wait would actually already be in St. Elmo instead of just right off the parking lot. So they could then go patronize some of these visitors. There's a lot of discussion about that. Somebody said, why can't we do it like the restaurants? You get a little buzzer and we beep you when your time's up. And that would give you the opportunity to roam St. Elmo, which is a great way to collect those tourist dollars. So here's the ticket kiosk for the incline. Here's your new your public art installation. Remember how I said it's quite likely that the ideas we're proposing tonight, some of them aren't going to happen? Well, Megan walks up to me just minutes before the presentation tonight and said, oh, we just learned that there's all these utilities under the ground. We stood right here where you're proposing for this thing to go. And so we already know this particular location is not going to happen. But the important thing about it is that it's very visible. When you come down the end of St. You want that displayed in a prominent place. It just take a little more refinement to get that exactly right. Because we don't have the entrance to the parking lot here any longer, there's actually room for a market building where the parking lot was, so you'd have a place to do farmers markets or sell your Christmas trees, your pumpkins, that kind of thing, right in the town center. So a great place for that in this location. This suggests restoring the two-story porch that used to be on the end of 1885. Terrific here. Again, without that entrance, there'd be room for street trees, and you could do parking along the street as well. Okay, further down, 1885. Richard's building, the gap between, these are the buildings that alternate, the side of the street that has the parking and buildings alternate. I think this is the corner of one of the two on-street parking spaces on this side of Tennessee. We're going to suggest adding some more. If you were to fill in that gap, and we have plans for buildings for how to do that, very thin, what we call liner buildings along this edge. And then provide the parking on the street and trees to shade the pedestrians. And then in this case, rotate those buildings. Now expect, nobody's going to tear down their one-story building and replace it with a one-story building along the street and put the parking behind just because you get a nice picture out of it like this. Like there's got to be some incentive for them to do that, right? Well, the incentive is the second or third or fourth floor, because that's how they can generate income that makes it a viable proposition to, it's obvious enough, but it's a decision you all will have to make about how you want this place to evolve. Now, this building, one of the coolest things I think I saw on my first trip to Chattanooga in October was this parking garage downtown with the climbing wall on the outside. I don't know of any other city that has a parking garage that just demands your attention the way that one does. Like, it is just fabulous. And the fact that there are restaurants with outdoor seating across the street, brilliant, Now, I learned while we were here that you already have a climbing gym in this building. And there's absolutely no shame in recognizing a good idea and copying it, right? So what we thought here, this also, that corner of that building terminates a vista as you come in from this direction. Wouldn't it be cool if we could have, a climbing school on the face of this building, and then a rooftop bar on the top, so you're coming down the incline. Somebody said, all you see of St. Elmo when you come down the incline is the rooftops. Well, let's put those to good use, and couldn't we have a rooftop bar restaurant on top there? The third floor is apparently vacant. Another one of the cool things I saw here in town is Crash Pad, the hostel. Well, if you've got a center for nonprofit outdoor recreation groups here in the neighborhood, and you've got things like connections to running and bicycle trails and to the incline and great restaurants and so forth, and then Rock City attracting all these visitors on top of the hill, it's not hard to imagine that a hostel or some hotel rooms on the top floor of that building wouldn't make a viable business proposition. So that's what's proposed for that building. Now, these, I might I might actually nail 45 minutes exactly here. These, um, these tunnels are interesting. First, because I don't think they're tunnels at all. I always thought they were bridges. I thought tunnels were the really long things you went through, but I've learned to call them tunnels here because you all do, apparently. Okay, the tunnels, they're really cool. You know, it's few neighborhoods have such striking entrance demarcations. You know, it's like you're entering the fortified city of St. Elmo, you know? But it's an entrance that could use a little maintenance, a little TLC, you know? And we're being kind here because, you know, this is not the entrance that has all the signs in front of it, you know, the next tunnel down. So we didn't pick the most dramatic one to illustrate, but that's really all this needs. So, you know, we suggested the obvious, why don't you just put St. Elmo, you know, the name of the place? And then, not surprisingly, you know, a number of people came up and said, we already did, you know, that was already a long time ago. And not only that, but we got the railroad to agree to let us do that. Apparently, somebody knows of a letter the railroad sent back and said, okay, you can do this, but you're responsible if the paint peels off and falls down and hurts somebody, you know. You take the liability for this, that. But they were fine with you doing that, which is fantastic because most people don't even get through to the railroad. Okay, so that's another one that needs to be dusted off and brought back. Now, as it happens in one of my visits, I don't know, I went to this restaurant, Aaliyah, downtown. I think I have that name right. And when you drive by on the street even, you see these enormous gas lights through the windows that hang over the table. Well, I think they're terrific. And I think that would be a great way to light your tunnel entrance, to have this flame kind of dancing on the ceiling of this tunnel, drawing your attention. It's the only way I know to compete with all the backlit signage and all that stuff is to have something that's much more understated here. Now, of course, that's tricky, you know, proposing to the railroad a gas light under their tunnel. But if you call it public art, you know, and you get an artist involved, they can pull off just about anything. How the artists do it, I have no idea, you know, but that's a possible way that you could pull off something like that entrance. Now, the other end, we thought deserved some attention too, some demarcation of that entrance. And we had already noticed on one of our trips from the airport that, I've forgotten the name of the neighborhood, but it's right off Brainerd. I'm sorry? Belvoir, yes, thank you. I'm sorry? Bell something. Okay, you all know it. You know the one I mean. It has great entrance markers at a number of the streets. They're kind of lost in all the commercial buildings right now, but a couple of them stand out. And we thought, well, that would be great for St. Elmo, and there's even local, or Ferger Place is another one. You know that place? Charming little neighborhood. The houses are great too, but has a great entrance. And your southern end, we thought, could use something like that. So we proposed that. And then we learned that, in fact, you had that. That hidden away down at that southern entrance is the last remaining pier of the pair that flanked either end of the other end of now, what happened apparently is that what we were told is that trucks were turning into the gas plant. Thank you. Okay, so trucks were turning in there and taking them out. You know, I went and looked and I thought, really? You know, because you'd have to be I think, a pretty careless driver not to get your truck through that gate, you know, and driving over where these piers are located to do so. So maybe into the gas station, maybe they were taking them out, you know, but maybe all that says is that you just need to reinforce these things well. So it does more damage to the truck than to your piers, but, you know, we think restoring, and that's, somebody else came in and said, oh, well, in fact, the city was the one that took that down and they saved the stone. We don't know where it is, you know, but it wouldn't be much work at all to do something like this, you know, and if you take some of these small ideas and knock those off early on, it makes a big impression, and people start thinking, well, you know, some of these medium-term and long-term ideas might be possible too, you know, so you can start advancing, you know, more and more of these ideas. The last one, once you put up that sign that says, you know, entering St. Elmo, We were having that conversation, and somebody came in and said, well, you know, Georgia has money, funds available, dedicated, earmarked for improving entrances to their state. So we thought that perhaps on the other side of that sign, if you put up a sign that said, welcome to Georgia, that perhaps you could persuade them to invest some of their funds in this entrance. Okay, let's see how I did. I think 4 minutes over, but perhaps you'll forgive me. That's it.
Thanks a lot, Mike. It's been a pleasure having Mike here, especially for me. I've worked with him over the years, and it's an amazing experience to see how a team comes in and gets together with the community and listens to what they say and comes out with something like this. So on that basis, thank you to all of you and to everyone else who participated, because these are only as good as the people who participate and the ideas that they bring to the table. It just doesn't matter unless it comes from the community where it happens. So thanks to all of you all, especially, and Mike. I just wanted to pick up on an idea that he brought up earlier, that this, our hope, C&E and everybody that participated, is that this is a guidebook, a long-term guidebook, an idea book, a vision book that everybody can use in some way. Whatever kind of project you may be pursuing, hopefully there's something in here that you can use in your discussions, in your planning. It's not as if there's one group that's decided they're going to go do this. I mean, this is a lot of information, it's a lot of history, it's a lot of analysis, and we hope that that will be useful to anyone who's doing some work here, whether they're a builder or developer or the city, the transportation department, because all those people have to be a part of this in order to make this happen over time. But there are things that are happening. I mean, sometimes they start with small things. Like Mike mentioned, we were out there trying to figure out where that sculpture would go with the city's art department, and hopefully we'll get it about where it is in the drawings, but there is a lot of stuff to figure out. But it starts with little things like that that are happening. The Riverwalk, which was really one of the things that got this whole thing started. The plans are being done for the Riverwalk, city and the county. The transportation department is working on the Virginia Avenue concept and some of those connections that you saw down St. Elmo and then across to Virginia. The Lookout Mountain Conservancy is continuing to work on their great Gill Trail project and the connections up to the Gill Trail and Old Wauhatchie. Mike showed you and mentioned the Rails to Trails project. I talked to TPL today. They're in ongoing discussions with CSX to see if they can get all of that land transferred. Ultimately, it takes a lot of work, but they're working on it and bringing that. That just would add another connection to this. We mentioned the art. And generally, I've heard already, and this is one of the reasons we undertook this, I've already heard that there's a lot of work going on out there. Some of the people mentioned the new building in the core of the downtown and some other houses under construction. So that, hopefully this offers some guidance and some groundwork for discussion of those things as those projects go forward, ideas for the people doing those things. And I also know that we've had C&E has already initiated conversations with the city and the county about that property behind the bylaw, mainly to see, you know, this project identifies potential and opportunity for that and what that could bring, hopefully and ideally, to the neighborhood. So that discussion is ongoing to see if the city and the county would like to pursue that. And that would lead into a more detailed planning process for what would happen there. And then I'll say, you know, the form-based code, the city's looking broadly at that idea of form-based code. The work that you see here would require a lot of rezoning. So this, just having them here and having them see ideas like auxiliary housing, the little housing units behind, which has been a challenge in the past. And then I'll speak for the team that was involved in this. We will continue to look for or seek out ideas, welcome and appropriate ideas to support this effort going forward, because we're really excited by what we see going on here in St. Elmo and excited about all the things that are starting to come together here. So you know, we really hope that this has been an an educational and enlightening and helpful process for you as you think about your future here. And hopefully it'll have some ideas and some things to help you as you go forward. So with that. Yep.
So we have some time for questions or comments, if you like. Please. I never understand. The question is, once you start talking about codes and so forth, how long does it take to get things like that implemented? Implementation is something that that I never think should take as long as it seems to. But there are a lot of people to check in with. You know, there are, yeah, I see, right. Because, you know, these decisions affect more than just who owns the property, let's say, or even more than just the city. And some of these, a new, because the question about the zoning ordinance in particular, you know, if you were to actually change the zoning, there's a whole legal process of notification and so forth that has to go on. So it can take months or years even to implement a change like that. If folks in St. Elmo were to get behind something like that and say, without adopting it as the city's zoning for this area, we'd like to let the city leaders know that this is the direction we'd like things to go. So, you know, we're voting, or we are going to send a letter with this document recommending this, like putting them on notice that this is our preferred direction or so forth. Then it gives them some indication that there's backing for it locally. So there's a sort of informal process, and local folks are going to know better than I do, you know, what the best route is. And then there's the more formal process that takes much longer, but it's worth it. Like the city of Miami just threw out the zoning ordinance for the entire city in rezone to a form-based code. Took years, but the whole city. Yep. Right. Well, there are two different areas, that's right. And the focus of our study area was the commercial center, if you will. And it's identified on the maps on the wall. That's actually the report that you'll get if you go online to track it down, or go to the library, there'll be a copy there. And that is different than the historic district. So the two meet, but they don't overlap, okay? One of the ideas that you point out, the idea of the auxiliary units, does overlap, because I think, you know, it's a great idea to consider both in the historic district and in the commercial center, but the process to accomplish that may be different for the exact reasons you described. Yep. What else? Yes.
Is a great idea. I don't know how it's going to be accomplished, or if this thing is supposed to. Oh, there it is. Uh, but also connecting 40th Street to the bottom of Ox Highway and making that intersection and getting rid of the other, I guess it's Tennessee Avenue. They actually, it comes and touches. That would be a way to build density with parks and art and make the connection to Alton Park much easier.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. I know exactly what you mean. There's a grade issue there, and then the matter of, you know, some of the buildings there, but we're talking about bigger long-term ideas, and that's a logical connection to make there.
And then you end up with all of that Tennessee Avenue in front of the one funeral home, right, as being available.
Yeah, that's right. Yes.
I don't even need a microphone. Um, and speaking of that, Bill, if you did that, then traffic could get off the freeway to come to Rock City, et cetera, on Market Street and come down Alton Park Boulevard and then down West 40th and straight up Lookout Mountain is what you're saying. Is that correct, Bill? Like that?
Yeah.
All roads lead to Rock City. That's right. You could say that way. But isn't that right? I mean, isn't that how it worked, Bill? You could tear those buildings, you know, you come through the building you own.
Yeah, I don't know enough about how to get from Alton Park to the interstate. I haven't looked at that closely enough. But assuming that part of the connection is as you say, then you're exactly right about how Alton Park would then connect via 40th more easily to both Tennessee and to St. Elmo, if you were to do that. Oh, yeah. Yeah, it's this connection that you're talking about. This is 40. Oh, I'm sorry, it's right here. Yes, yes, you're right. Yeah, yeah, exactly right. No, but listen, we're all proposing ideas for, well, understand that these are just ideas at this point. So we've certainly taken a few liberties with land owned by the city and by the county and by some of you all, businesses, residents, that sort of thing, Georgia. Um, what else? What else should we talk about? Oh, I'm sorry. Please.
Yeah, I have a question about. Oh, there's a microphone. I have a question about the density housing that you're thinking about putting in. I guess one of the really wonderful things about St. Elmo is a lot of classic old architecture, and I know, or not architecture formally, but just nice old houses. A lot of what has gone in other parts of the city is less aesthetically appealing, and a lot of it is sitting empty in other parts of the city that I'm sure that someone projected they needed lots and lots and lots of apartment buildings. I'm just kind of wondering what, as a neighborhood, is available to us to make sure that those same a lot of what has been put in are things that, because I've known people who've lived there, are not particularly well made. They're kind of expensive, and some of them are sort of eyesores, to be honest. And I don't know. I'm just kind of curious about what codes or what things are available to make sure that it's still with the aesthetic feeling of the rest of the neighborhood.
Okay, the presentation was limited to 45 minutes, I know. How much time do I have to respond to that? That's an excellent question. And it has a lot to do with the character of St. Elmo as it continues to evolve. My guess is that a lot of folks are going to feel the way you do, have similar concerns, and others won't, okay? And you all are gonna have to work that out. There's an architect whose work, in fact, Pier Carlo Bontempi got the Driehaus Award this year. He says, an Italian architect says that tradition, which is what you're talking about, the kind of architectural tradition is innovation that has succeeded. Pretty simple, straightforward definition. It's innovation that has succeeded. So if it keeps working, we keep building it and it becomes the tradition. But that means that you need both operating simultaneously, tradition and innovation, to see what innovative ideas succeed. It's conceivable that some of what you're describing is an attempt at innovation that perhaps in your mind isn't succeeding or hasn't succeeded yet. It may take time to play out. You may have to ask a few other people who might think it's successful, disagree with you. But this idea that we're extending a tradition of ideas that have worked and then thinking about how do we innovate with new materials and new building techniques, and frankly, a level of craftsmanship that doesn't always match. Sometimes it does, but doesn't always match, what we've had in the past in this country. But there are really good craftspeople out there doing amazing work. You know, your historic district guidelines, I heard a lot, we talked a lot about that the last time I was here, about how thick the book is and so forth. But you know what? It's gotten you national recognition for the quality of architectural preservation that you've accomplished here. So it's something to think about. The smart code, the form-based code that's proposed here, has very limited ideas about architecture, very tentative, because frankly, because that question, there's not been enough discussion about that question, how innovative you want the architecture to be moving forward, or how traditional you want it to be. Some places I work follow the tradition rigorously. They have what's called a style-based pattern book. And you do that, and that's it. You know, and you get architecture every bit as good as what you've had. But you don't get the innovation. But those places do a great job of raising the level of craft. Builders get very good at those traditional details and so forth again. Sorry, that's a long-winded answer, but it's a difficult question, and yeah, it's one, I'm glad you raised it. There are tools out there like pattern books and design codes, the Prince of Wales has started a fabulous school because he recognizes that we can't build in the tradition anymore unless we train craftspeople to be able to do that. And they're building load-bearing stone buildings again. You know, they've gone to that extreme. So, but there's a whole range of options. Once you sort out what it is you want in that regard, the tools are available to see that you get it. How's that for a vague non-answer to an important question? I'm sorry, we're going to squeeze one more in. I think I know why. Okay.
Is that how Asheville did it?
Yes, yes, yes. In fact, the outfit that wrote Asheville's pattern book is UDA, Urban Design Associates, who were just involved in doing some other work here in Chattanooga. You know, so they know the place. They do a great job at the style-based pattern books. It's not a zoning ordinance; it just controls the style of the architecture. Okay, I heard a rumble of applause. That might mean we're wrapping things up. Am I right? Okay, great. Thanks, everybody.
So as Mike mentioned, this will be up on the website. We have cards out when you signed in that have the website that you can go to. In a couple of days, it'll be up. If it's not, just keep checking back. And as Macon said, we'll continue to work through this and implement the ideas, and encourage all of you to contact any one of us as you have ideas and express your interests as well. So again, thank you all for coming. We appreciate it, and I look forward to implementation of the plan.